I'm very sorry to announce the African stream is closing down. I know this will be disappointing to many of you who have supported us from the beginning. It's disappointing to us too. We made a genuine effort to continue after the attacks by the US State Department last September, but unfortunately we couldn't after US Secretary of State Antony Blinken called us Kremlin propagandists. We were removed from YouTube within 2 days, Instagram within a week, and TikTok within 2 weeks. Additionally, we were demonetized on X. Across all platforms, we had over 2 million followers, and all 2 million were passionate about seeing our beloved continent reported on properly and fairly. After the attacks, our ability to generate income was killed. We were unable to travel to many of the essential locations we had planned, and we were barely able to continue running the business that so many of you have come to love. I'm not saying all this so that you feel sorry for us. You shouldn't. We take immense pride in our accomplishments at African Stream. We started this because we were passionate about accurately reporting on the most important continent in the world and doing so from a pan-African and anti-imperialist perspective. We reported from Benin, Nigeria, Ghana, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Liberia and South Africa, as well as many other important locations throughout our continent and beyond, which were often neglected and misreported by the mainstream media.
All right, guys, welcome to Pan-African Perspectives, your weekly live stream. We talk about all things pertaining to Africa, and affecting the African diaspora. I will get back to that video in a moment, but I did just want to come back to you guys and say we have some terrible news. As you guys saw, African Stream is shut down permanently. You guys might remember all throughout last year, I was doing a weekly live stream with African Stream, and we had to pause that live stream. We came back as a monthly live stream, but I was notified on Sunday, yesterday, that African Stream will no longer be operational. In fact, we were planning to have a live stream this week, and we had to cancel it because African Stream is no longer operational. So, for those of you who are new, my name is Joe Hatago. I'm the founder of Authentic African, a platform meant to get people to do 3 things: move, visit, or invest in the continent of Africa. Our goal is to do that through sharing of stories between Africans on the continent and Africans in the diaspora, no matter how they got to the diaspora, whether they're foundational Black Americans, they were trafficked through the transatlantic slave trade, or they went through their own accord via plane, and or they're first generation Americans, such as myself. And our goal is to help Africa get back to its rightful place on the world stage through all of those things. We also have an e-commerce store where we support African artisans by selling products that they make across the world as ethically sourced, handmade products from the continent of Africa. We make them available to diasporans, more specifically in the United States and Canada, but we're also offering it eventually to all over Europe. So those Africans that are living outside the continent that are looking for products made on the continent, we are making that available to you through the same brand, AuthenticAfrican.com. Now, with that, I want to get back into this story. So, as I mentioned, I got that message over the weekend saying that African Stream will no longer be operational. That is sad on so many different levels because, as Ahmed was saying, there was on-the-ground reporting in all these different locations, and they were giving you the Pan-African perspective. We do not have that in terms of real reporting on the ground, really, through any of the news outlets that are out there. They were the best independent news outlet as it pertained to real reporting. The rest of us report on other reporting, right? So I comment on other reporting that I see. Much of it had come from African Stream. I still do the weekly live stream where we talk about news around the continent, and most of what we did was around African Stream. And unfortunately, this is a sad day for all of us. I had been following African Stream, much like many of you. I had been following African Stream for a while, and Ahmed actually reached out to me once the collaborations were launched on Instagram. And I had started taking on some collaborations. As you guys have noticed, I do a lot of collaborations now with folks that I respect, the content that they do. Ahmed had reached out and asked about collaborations. And with that discussion came a broader discussion about how do we take the news that they're reporting on daily, consolidate that into a weekly live stream so all of you can be up to speed on what's been happening throughout the week. There's a lot of news that's happening. They reported on a ton of stuff. And so what we would do is weekly, we would curate that news. We, decide what news stories we were going to discuss, and we would do a deep dive. And I was doing that with Inem Richardson. And then she would bring on all of these different guests from all over the world, people who are Pan-Africanists that are on the ground in these different places. We spoke to people from Sudan. We spoke to people from the Congo. We spoke to people from South Africa. We spoke to people from Kenya. So when the police were firing into the protests last year in Kenya, we spoke to those people directly who had been at those protests, who had been tear gassed that morning. We had them on the live stream. When there was questions about what is happening with Ibrahim Traore and what's happening in Burkina Faso, we had Inem Richardson on the ground in Burkina Faso telling us what's happening there. When there were questions about xenophobia and what's happening in South Africa, we had someone in from South Africa talking about what's happening there. We had people in from the Congo. And so now, unfortunately, we don't have that anymore. And so we will have to look at other trusted news sources as much as possible. And I'll try my best to give you who some of those might be. No one is good so far. And we'll let you know if we see anybody who picks up the mantle. But I haven't seen anyone as good as African Stream thus far. And so we'll try our best to be able to give you what those news stories are, where to find the news, and how to stay abreast of the news. So what we'll do is I'll still be going live weekly with Gloria Ayo, but we no longer will be having the monthly live stream. So just a few comments people are saying. I want to make sure I get to those because this is a sad day. Afri says, I'm crushed by this news. If I wasn't broke, I would have helped them. Crushed again. How much does it cost to keep the operation money running? That's a good question. I do not know the answer to that question. That's a question for Ahmed Caballo. You could always reach out to him and ask him. But they had raised some significant money. And let me tell you, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of inside baseball too, on how this business was built. I interviewed Ahmed Caballo maybe about 2 or 3 months ago before we restarted the live stream. And he explained what he had done. So his strategy was to start with social media, and they were going to bring it to a website, much like, I know for some people there might be a guilty pleasure of Shade Room, the Shade Room, right? So the Shade Room was big on social media. Then they built a website to drive traffic to the website to maybe own that audience more. That was the exact same trajectory that African Stream was on. I mean, over 2 million followers across all platforms. I mean, everywhere. And if you go on these live streams that we were doing monthly, because the only way you can access African Stream as a brand is on X right now, the number of people that would join these live streams, over 1,000 people would be live. That's like some of the numbers you see on all of the, the internet nonsense that you see, over 1,000 people, 2,000 people time to time live on the live streams, listening to this news. And so I was happy to be able to work with Inem, Ahmed, and the team to be able to present that information to you guys. And unfortunately, that avenue is gone. A couple more things. Shout out to IT Industry Tools. Wayne Witherspoon says, Grand Rising Philadelphia is in the building. Fred Bantu says, hello, what about Rumble? YouTube is heavily censored. So yes, well, they were kicked off of YouTube. Rumble is still available, but here's the issue with Rumble. Rumble is the home to a large number of people who had been kicked off of YouTube, in many cases for good reason. And so what's left on Rumble are a lot of people that advertisers do not want to put their ads in front of. So just by the nature of being on Rumble is not going to be able to help monetize enough to justify furthering and continuing the business, right? So that's one of the challenges of operating with Rumble. But I understand they also lost their monetization on X. They were allowed to be on X, but they lost their monetization on X. Don't forget to share this video, y'all. Make this known, people. One love. Thank you. I appreciate that, Wayne. Yes, absolutely. Share this with folks. So there were some comments on Instagram that I want to get to too before I get back into that video. So Rays of Light says the non-melanated individuals are so desperate to block our power, empowerment, truths, and gifts, everything. And that is what Rays of Light had to say. Mohammed Haslem says, lots of unaliving happening in his city in Cameroon, and no one is talking about this. Now, this is something that would have probably been on the topic of discussion for African Stream, but unfortunately, they have shut down operations. So what I have been told, actually, you know what? Let me get back into the video to finish the rest of the video, give you some more commentary, and then I'll give you some more of what Ahmed told me yesterday.
Due to our work, we were invited to conferences and workshops in Iran, Cuba, Tanzania, Venezuela, and Eritrea. We wanted to make an impact, and alhamdulillah, we definitely did that. Before us, there were very few places on Instagram where you could find educational and informative news about the continent. Today, there are numerous brilliant Pan-African pages and new ones emerging every day. The space is now infinitely richer, and that's not because of us, but because of you, the audience. You showed that there's an appetite for African-centered news delivered by radical young Africans.
Can I just say really quickly, 2 shout outs on there. Authentic African was the first. Shout out to African Stream for doing that. And then Gloria Ayo, the Gloria Ayo, who we go live with every Thursday on This Week in Africa, is also featured there as well. So I love that we got the stamp of approval from African Stream, the 2 of us. So we will continue to do our best to deliver the news to you guys weekly. So make sure you stay tuned to that. I will get back to the video, but I just wanted to call that out really quickly. Let's get back into it.
Guest followers assembled on any page, the richness of the discussion in the comment section, the feedback, the stories you asked us to cover in the DMs, the guests you introduced us to, none of this would have been possible without your contribution. Finally, I'd like to thank my team, a group of 20 and 30-year-old Africans, one 40-year-old and one 45-year-old, shout out to Ken and Jeffrey, managed to catch the attention of the world's biggest, most powerful empire, and for that, we can hold our heads high. I'm sorry if you feel let down. We gave it our all. I moved with my wife and newborn baby to Nairobi, Kenya to set up African Stream. My eldest son was born a couple of weeks after we launched. We gave it our all, but now it's time for you all to step up and pick up the baton. Keep talking about our continent, keep posting about our continent, and keep exposing the role of imperialism in our continent. We are all African Stream. Forward ever, backwards never.
Man, that's powerful. And it's sad to see that a platform that was that good, that was doing that much good work to going away. I had many conversations with Ahmed and with other members of the team, and in our conversation over the weekend, what he said was the X platform is still going to stay up. It will act as an archive for all things that they've ever posted about, right? So all the things, all the news that you've ever wanted to follow up on, check in on, it's all still there. That's not going away. They're going to leave it up. I'm asking about other ways to continue to keep it going, but as of right now, it'll act as an archive. So that is where you can find all the previous African Stream stuff. We don't know if there'll be other iterations in the future and how that will look, but just know that, as he said, there are others of us that are really going to be working to try to continue to work on this idea of Pan-Africanism, posting about Africa and making sure that people are aware of what's happening on the continent and ways that they can get more involved. There are many pages that he featured there in that video. There are others that are up and coming. And so I will do what I can with the platform that I have as much as possible to continue to tell the story. I will work as much as I can with other people who want to do the same. And you never know. You never know. Things can change in the future. I'm working on some things behind the scenes that I can't really talk about right now that I hope that will eliminate this from ever happening again, right? So that people can have control of their own destinies, whether they're on social media or not, a lot sooner, and with the same kind of audience and the ability to staff that many people. Because look, the thing is the folks that were there were all very smart, capable people, and they had to be paid for their work, right? I mean, they had engineers, they had reporters, they had people who did the graphics, all of that stuff, the editors, all of that stuff needed all of that stuff required a role. Somebody had to do that stuff, do those things. Sorry, and it was important that they had the funding to do so. And so, without having the funding, the monetization on all of these platforms, and not enough people supporting through Patreon, unfortunately, they had to shut it down. It is really sad. I think, what is Fred Bentu saying? Look at this way they are afraid of African Stream because they're competent. Yes, Ashton says African Stream is excellent. It was done because of ordinary folks in the first world. Find out, they will start supporting you all. Deborah B says, so sad. I just found them a few months before and was grateful to hear African voices and stories and analysis of the world. What a loss. Damn, the dying supremacist empire, may it fall soon. That's according to Deborah B. Those are the words of Deborah B. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, look, what I've been trying to do with Authentic African is, as much as possible, share about what's happening in the world with each other, right? And so there's diaspora news, there's African news, right? I do that as much as possible. You guys might see that. What I saw with African Stream was the first time, because what I used to do before African Stream is I would research one story across 4 or 5 different places. And I'd be like, all right, this has a Western spin. This has a spin based on its own country. I never felt like I was getting the story. And with African Stream, what I really loved about what they did is they had people on the ground going to these places, asking people. They were asking people about the story, about the situation that is happening. They had boots on the ground, and they had a Pan-Africanist lens. So it wasn't about a Western lens or an Eastern lens or propaganda within the country. It was about a Pan-Africanist view. What does this mean for us who are advancing our people? And, it's difficult to do what Ahmed did. He's come from the world of journalism. He's been a journalist himself, and he's spent time traveling around the world, operating as a journalist for other companies. And so he started this company to basically focus on the one area that we just did not see it happening. And that happened to converge with this group of people who are looking to also gain that level of insight and understanding and knowledge about what's happening on the continent. As people are deciding to move here, visit here, invest on the continent, they want to know what's happening. And also people who want to support. And so, like I said, I will do my best to continue the mantle. I know other people who are also really going to do their best to continue. So I'm really looking forward. Sorry, I just got a message from my day job. I'm really looking forward to doing my best, to do my duty, to share as much as I can. But it is a sad day for sure. When we first had to slow down and pivot last year, I was a little nervous about how much time they had left. And to be honest with you, I'm grateful that they were able to go as long as they were, because we were thinking they may have to shut down in January of 2025. So the fact that we went all the way until the 22nd of June is a testament to how much you all and many all beyond who are going to watch this video wanted to have that information, and we're pushing to make sure that they got it. So again, as I said before, Gloria and I will do our best to pick up the mantle or pick up the baton. I don't know what the mixed metaphors, but you guys understand what I mean. To make sure that this information is available to you as much as we can. Now, of course, we won't be referencing African Stream stories as we had been before. So we'll have to reference other stories, which we have some other trusted outlets that we reference stories from. So we'll be able to reference those stories and still bring them to you weekly. So Ashton says, don't give up. There's another way. Come back. Just change the outside packaging of the channel. Hope that makes sense. Never give up. Yeah, I mean, look, the branding is yes, you can always come back with different branding for sure. The challenge is there was money that was raised with the expectation that there would be a financial model that would support raising outside funding. Because in order to have all of those folks, you kind of have to raise money to begin with, right? So unless they did another crowdfunding under a different brand, you know, there's a new administration, they may see things differently, but at the end of the day, it may just be difficult to operate exactly the way they were. But, you know, nothing is out of the question. We will see what happens. We will see what happens. I don't want to speak about the future. I don't know enough yet about, you know, the plans for the future. But as those things get developed, I will come back to you guys with that knowledge and insight as I get it. I will be trying my best to talk to, you know, Ahmed and the team about, you know, what future endeavors they'll be up to. And we'll come back on and have them talk about them here. So you'll be able to find them in new ways. So you may not see that African Stream logo, but the people behind African Stream will continue to be able to get you the news as much as possible. They just may be in different places. All right, what else do we got? I see Rays of Light. So Goddess Shah Lotus says, nah, oh, no, I just joined. Yeah, African Stream is no longer. Yeah, I got the news yesterday, just before that post went out and before I collaborated on that post. I was made aware that this was coming. Officially, I had heard some other things that it was potentially happening. But, you know, it's a sad day, you know, in the world of Pan-Africanists. It's also a sad day in the world of people who are into news and journalism. You know, that's the, you know, especially in a democracy or in a world like this, you know, the news is meant to hold people accountable. It's meant to tell us what they don't want you to know, you know. And what ended up happening was the major news outlets started to get watered down, right? They started to filter what they shared with the public. And there are many different reasons and speculation as to what that is. I generally go with the bottom line. Brands do not want to pay to advertise on something that's going to talk negatively about them as a brand. And many of these brands perform human rights violations, atrocious ones, around the world. And so many of them do not want to get called out. And so that's why many of the larger news outlets don't talk about what's happening in Africa, because those are the people who are actually exploiting Africans. Many of the major brands that you guys all know and love. And so what I loved about African Stream is they were independently owned. They had raised some funding and they were looking to kind of build their own way. And we just weren't able to get there fast enough, or they weren't able to get there fast enough before, you know, it ran out and they were kicked off. So unfortunately, that's where we are right now. I am looking forward to, you know, eventually, like I said, giving you guys more insight and more information as to what's happening next. I don't know how many people are aware of the timeline of events that happened. You guys let me know if you're aware or not. I don't want to go back and rehash everything if you're not aware. If you guys want me to, I can. So you guys let me know in the comments. I'm happy to go back and basically tell you what happened. Because yeah, well, it was on this. It was basically on the, because nobody said anything. I'll just say it. Those of you who already know, sorry. But on September 17th, African Stream put out a message on X that said that African Stream has been banned by Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We were censored after U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken made false, unsubstantiated claims against us on Friday. To be clear, contrary to the accusations, African Stream does not receive any funding from any state. No country is funding African Stream, because what was stated was that they were a Russian propaganda machine. At that time, they said, we'll release a full statement regarding our work, our funding, and these accusations. We currently are consulting our legal team to figure out how best to move forward. We thank you all of our loyal followers and encourage those who want to hear about Pan-African Perspectives to join our Patreon and Telegram. They were also on TikTok and X at that point in time, but they were also kicked off of TikTok the following week. So this question: can't they build a website? So yes, they can. The thing is, to have a website, to monetize a website, you have to have a ton of traffic. And so they were using social media to drive traffic to the eventual website, which is where they were going to host all the news. The issue is that they were cut off of the social media before they really could get the website going. And unfortunately, they just were not able to do that. And also, you can generate a lot more revenue from 3 million subscribers / followers across the platforms on social media than you can with that many people on a website. And the revenue was required to pay for all the staff. Fan base is an option, but it's still too small, right? Because the issue is the cost to support the staff, right? It always comes back to the cost to support the staff. In order for us to get that quality of news, that quality of editing, that required functioning staff, which needed money to pay for them. So fan base, Rumble, Patreon, a website, that wasn't going to be enough. That wasn't enough, at least to sustain them past this point in time of June 22nd, 2025. I would just say, trust me, all the ideas that you guys are throwing out there are clearly have been explored, and the rate of income that could be made would not support the business the way it was. So everyone throwing out ideas about fan base, we mentioned that already. Unfortunately, fan base was not going to be enough to support it. I think fan base is a great platform, by the way, amazing platform. And so let me talk to you guys as someone who, in my day job, I work in advertising. So I am very familiar with how advertising works. Brands and advertisers spend the most money right now on social media, on digital. When they're spending money on digital, it's on social media. It's on social media. And so those creators on social media get to share in that revenue with the social media platforms. If you build your own website or a Discord or a Telegram, some percentage of those social media following will come there, right? Probably a large percentage of them. But that number of people, there's not enough advertising that you can set up there that would cover the cost of having everyone. And a big thing about African Stream was they wanted this information democratized and available to everyone. So they didn't want to make it so that you had to pay to see the news information, because the only way to make up for that delta cost in advertising dollars and the number of people that they had visiting their website was to do like a New York Times thing where you start charging people a service. But because they wanted this democratized and available to anyone in Kenya, South Africa, Ethiopia, Sierra Leone, anywhere in Latin America, in order to do that, they needed to make it free and for it to continue to be free. In order for it to be free, it has to be monetized through advertising. In order to get enough advertisers, you have to be in a place where there is a lot of inventory, a lot of visits in order to make it make sense financially. It just does not work if you start your own platform or if you go to a smaller platform. In fact, YouTube alone and Instagram, had they not been kicked off of it, would not have been enough to fully fulfill what they needed to do to expand out what they were doing and to continue to grow, right? Even still, they would have had to have other models that they were going to continue to work on and grow and build over time. So, so AKA Akumuku, Akumeku says, next step, subscription. If Africans are truly Pan-African, it's time to show it. Yeah, unfortunately, again, they wanted to democratize the information, make it available to everyone, so they couldn't have a subscription service for everyone. Now, they could have had subscription service for some, which is what they did with Patreon, but again, it was for everyone. It was for the masses. Like, that was their goal. They didn't want to turn this into all about capitalism, right? And look, obviously there needed to be a model that made sense in order to be able to pay for the staff and the employees that were there. So I do understand the sentiment and everybody mentioning all the ideas for how to monetize it. You have to know that they've looked at all these ideas prior to determining it was time to shut down the platform. And the platform, as it was operating as a shell of itself anyway, right? So you had the African Stream brand available only on X and on like Discord and places like that, or Telegram, I think it was. But then it was under the CEO, Ahmed Caballo. It was under his name across like YouTube and the other places where you could still find the content. So you would still be able to find it there if in fact you knew where to look. But so you would still see the African Stream logo, content was still being produced, but they definitely reduced the number of folks that were working on things. And it also really reduced the bandwidth. And so that's why, as I mentioned you guys before, we weren't able to go live every week anymore. We started going live once a month with African Stream. And so that's when I reached out to Gloria Ao to do the live stream weekly. So we could continue to go live weekly, even though I wasn't going to be able to go live with African Stream. So we will continue to go live weekly. I can't tell you if we'll ever see Enem Richardson again on a monthly live stream where we talk about news. We may or may not. I would love to be able to make that happen, but I'm not 100% sure we can. It does look like that may not happen. So if that does happen, I'll definitely let you guys know. But it doesn't seem like that is going to be happening at this point in time. So I think this month in Africa that you guys can go back and look at the feed and see is the last one for the foreseeable future, where we're going live with Enem and you're seeing the African Stream brand. So unfortunately, the African Stream, authentic African brand together, this logo that you guys might have been used to seeing in the upper right-hand corner right here, you will not be seeing this anymore. This is gone for the foreseeable future, maybe forever, unfortunately. So as I mentioned, it is a sad day. I talked to a couple people about it today. They were like, where are we going to get our news from? Where do we learn about what's happening? So again, we will continue to work on This Week in Africa. As I mentioned, I'm going to keep mentioning that because new people are joining. So we'll be on This Week in Africa on Thursdays. What time are we on Thursdays? Sorry, it's escaping me. We're on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Thursday. That is where you can expect to get This Week in Africa moving forward. And we'll continue to be doing that. So that's this logo here with myself and the Gloria Ao. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Let's see. There's a couple comments. Okay. Africa can never be free or independent without independent pro-African media. Lenora says, not forever. Yeah, I mean, I hope not forever, but it seems like it could be the case. I mean, maybe another iteration. There may be another iteration. There may be another version of it. But as of right now, it's looking like it's final. This is looking like a last and final. Deborah B says, shutting down African Stream is indicative of what's happening in the world. The power to tell the narrative can no longer be controlled. They are threatened by voices of the global South, and rightly so. I can't disagree with that. So yeah, it's really unfortunate to see. It is not at all what I anticipated happening. And that's we are going to need to control our own narrative moving forward. And then this is an indicator of that. So like I said, there's some things going on behind the scenes that I can't really talk about yet. I learned my lesson before not to talk about anything too early. So just stay tuned. We will continue to give you guys updates wherever I can with whatever I can. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Pro Woman says, did any African governments oppose African Stream, or was it just the U.S.? Great question. Great question. I haven't heard anyone outwardly opposing African Stream. The only government that made public statements about African Stream was the United States government. And it was the government of the United States that was most closely aligned, I think, into, well, I would say, well, I don't know, I wouldn't put it that way. But yeah, it was the American government was the only one. I'll just say that. I don't want to make any false statements. But yeah, it was the American government was the only one, unfortunately. So yeah, it's painful. It hurts. You know, it's not exactly what we anticipated for the future of what we were doing here, and the partnerships that we were looking to continue to build and evolve. I do want to download this video and play it for you guys so I can take you back to September of last year, where this is where it all began, right? This is where it all began. And it's unfortunate, but I think it's important to share this with you guys. For those of you who weren't aware, this was it.
RT also secretly runs the online platform African Stream across a wide range of social media platforms. Now, according to the outlet's website, African Stream is, and I quote, a pan-African digital media organization based exclusively on social media platforms, focusing on giving a voice to all Africans both at home and abroad. In reality, the only voice it gives is to Kremlin propagandists.
The only voice it gives is to Kremlin propagandists. Wow. I mean, I saw that video, and I remember seeing that video and thinking to myself, what? And then, of course, the very next day, my phone is blowing up. I can't find African Stream. What happened to African Stream? What happened to African Stream? And I go online. I see it's no longer on YouTube. I see it's no longer on Facebook. I see it's no longer on Instagram. So I send a message to the team, and they let me know, yeah. And they were trying to figure out what to do. It was gone. They even lost access to their Google Drive, where they were hosting videos. Like the videos that they were doing, they were saving them to a Google Drive. They lost access to their Google email address. I mean, they took away YouTube, email, Facebook, Instagram, monetization on Twitter. And it was all because of that video that I just shared, which was unsubstantiated. I mean, look, you guys watch the content, right? You guys watched. Did it give voice to Russian propagandists? I mean, Kremlin propagandists? Look, I have my opinions about some African countries and how cozy they might be with countries that I also look at with a side eye a little bit. But I will say this. I don't see, so I myself, of course, would not have aligned myself with a company that would be doing something like that. They were just reporting on what was happening from a Pan-Africanist perspective. And that was the problem. And that's power, right? When you have someone try to shut you down by making statements like that, we don't know what happened behind the scenes. You know, there may have been calls to the platforms to remove African Stream. I don't know. And people ask me a lot, what does that mean for you and your platform? And does that mean you're next? And I don't know. I don't know. You know, as of right now, it seems things are okay. But I don't know. I don't know what will happen. You know, so, you know, just make sure you guys support the platform however you feel fit. You know, if you want to support us through, you know, any kind of support here at the bottom, you can, if you want to. You can also visit the website, authenticafrican.com, and you can, you know, purchase something from one of the African artisans that we are bringing products to the United States from. So it's ethically sourced, handmade products. So everything from Senegalese baskets to shea butter to mask and carvings that are made by the Maasai people. I mean, we have a number of different things that we are brought to the States and that we help distribute to Americans who want to get closer to their roots. So you can support in any way. That is what we're doing with Authentic African, to try to maintain what we're doing here and to continue to bring you this stuff for free. That's power, the sauce that Africa needs, power to stick it to the man. Nubian Cutie says, we're all the same struggle when it comes to the truth and the U.S. Hello, people. Hello, please stop calling it a government. It's a regime now. Let's continue to tell the truth now. Okay, that's what Nubian Cutie says. That's a regime. That's what Nubian Cutie says. Lenora, good point. Discredit is always the first step in elimination. Crazy, but it's true. Pro Woman says, remember seeing that video, thought it was an AI deepfake, never even saw a Black Russian on the stream. Well, there aren't any. But yeah, I mean, yeah, look, you know, I always try to put myself in someone else's shoes when something like that happens, right? Not to excuse what they did, to outright lie, but they were in the middle of a campaign, a presidential campaign, and they were looking at every way to get an advantage to win the presidency. And African Stream was critical of the United States in general. So they were critical, and not critical of the United States only, but just like how they had been interacting with different countries in Africa. By being critical, they mentioned names, and they did say that whoever would become president would not be beneficial to Africa. That was what they said, because they mentioned indiscriminate bombings in different countries. And I think that was there was some news outlets that were reporting that was fake news, which they couldn't pinpoint anything that African Stream had said that was false. And so in the middle of this campaign, when grasping at straws, trying to ensure that they won, unfortunately, that statement was made. And unfortunately, they lost anyway. So all of that still losing the campaign is just, it's like it adds insult to injury, right? Alim Tanta says, give your comment on the comment. Which comment do you want me to give a comment on? Wa Purist says, what do they want Africans to do? It's a good question. Sit down and be quiet, I think is what they want us to do. I don't think they want us to speak out against things that are happening on the continent that the West is responsible for. So Afua says, just joined. What awful news, is terrible. Yeah, so while Pires says Africans has reached a place where it's time to rule themselves, I think is what you were trying to say. I agree. Self-governance and intracontinental trade needs to be paramount, because the way things are working right now, Africa is really not benefiting from its own natural resources, and it's time. So Trolling on Dub says, African Stream was clear in its analysis to explicitly combat imperialism. That is true. That is true. Not just brands. I talked about brands wanting to advertise in certain places earlier. Sorry. Blackness is constantly under attack, constantly. That's what Ubuntu Flavor says. Yeah. Okay. Afua Warner says, That's the only channel that gives well-researched, well, I guess you mean irrefutable information. What madness. Yes. Yeah, it's a tough one. You know, because when like I said, I was still living in Ghana when I became aware of African Stream. So, I was going through a lot of transitions in my life. So I was living in Ghana, and I was at the beginning of 2023 when end of 2022, beginning of 2023, as they were taking off. It took off quick. And so I had become aware of them, and I had even been posting some of their content on my page or on Authentic African. And so, I was like, I want to continue to follow what they're doing. I love what they're up to. And I just stayed, I followed them. I subscribed on different platforms, and I was just following everything they were up to. And I was like, man, this is really, really good stuff. So fast forward to about 2-3 months later, after I had moved to Sierra Leone, that's when I started engaging with Ahmed, the CEO and founder of African Stream. And then that's when we decided that we were going to do the weekly live stream and that we were going to collaborate on posts, and that developed that relationship throughout 2024. And unfortunately, throughout the end of 2023 into early 2024. And then, we were still going live. I had some issues. I got kicked off of being able to go live on Instagram. I started getting notifications on my platform and my channels about, posting false information. And, my channel got dinged. I lost the ability to go live on Instagram twice. And then eventually, we got it back up and running. We were back live. And then this happened last September. And we had to pivot again. So G-Man87 says, maybe I missed this. Have you tried to incorporate internationally and run operations under a foreign entity? So no one asked that specific question, but I think the main issue was financing. Right? So that's what it came down to. You have to pay all of that talented staff. And so without financing, you are unable to do so. Yeah, that's just the long and short of it. So Afuel Warner says, we need our own platform. Can this be challenged? It's unjust. Black people know what they have to do, but do we have the courage? Unapologetically. We do need our own platform, but again, finances. The thing that it's a double-edged sword when you deal with social media. These platforms have over 2 billion people on them. And so the ability to grow an audience quickly on a platform that already has a pre-established audience of 2 billion people is why you start that, right? Now, you send those guys to a website and it's still not enough to pay for the ads on the website. So Mosey Main just joined. I mentioned this earlier, but it's still not enough to pay for ads. As somebody who's worked in advertising my entire career, so outside of what I do here, I work in advertising. That's like my day job, right? So I know exactly what it takes to have a website that has enough traffic to make enough to support a news staff like that. And they just weren't there yet. It wasn't there yet. You need a lot more visits than what they were going to be able to do. You can benefit from being on YouTube and the like, but they were kicked off of YouTube, right? Because YouTube had over 2 billion users. Facebook has over 2 billion, whatever the number is now. I don't even know what the numbers are, but yeah. So Lenora says, we can always complain about injustice, but I want to know, what are we going to do? What's the next step? Is a plan being executed or a plan being created? So not for African Stream. It looks like African Stream is done in its current iteration. There are other folks operating their own platforms, and they will continue to operate their own platforms. But as of right now, African Stream in its current iteration is gone. And it looks like it's gone for good. So unfortunately, that is the answer to your question, Lenora. It is gone. But again, there are other folks picking up the mantle, as we saw. This is a good point here. If the billionaires in Africa aren't puppets of the West, they can form a corporation that can launch a satellite service to run an independent media. That is true. They could. They could. Will they? Well, that's another question. I don't know if you guys remember, Washington Post was not looking like it was going to survive. That's an American institution in terms of news for America, right? And Jeff Bezos, whether you like him or not, and this isn't about him as an individual, but he decided as a billionaire to go basically buy the Washington Post to keep it running. New York Times offered a subscription service to keep it running. Those two options were not available to African Stream. Doesn't mean it won't be available in the future, but it's not available at this very moment. So, I think if you guys want to see African Stream come back, I would say for any of you who happen to know any people that are high net worth individuals that care about Pan-Africanism, hound their inboxes, message them, let them know that they can't stand by and let this happen, right? Because, and to be honest with you, the only way that something like African Stream survives and is able to come back is through something like that, right? And so, if you guys want to brainstorm on something and try to work through figuring out how to do that, more than happy to have discussions in the future about that. But yeah, figure out how to do that and get to it. I don't have the bandwidth to organize on that behalf, but the audience is here. I can present it to you guys. Many of you are smart individuals, organized individuals, some high net worth individuals who follow and watch along. There are even some influential figures and celebrities who had followed African Stream, who follow Authentic African. You guys can do the searches in the followers to see who they are. Hit up their inboxes and let them know that they can't let this happen. You know who they are. So many of you guys have told me who are those folks who follow, especially on Instagram. So I recommend you guys go to the Instagram page, look at who some of those followers are. Oscar winners, Oscar nominated individuals, New York Times bestsellers. So just look at those guys, hit up their inboxes, and you ask them. G-Man 587. I do not have any of their financials. You can definitely shoot me an email. My email's here on the bottom of the screen. So you can shoot me an email. I would definitely see if they are willing to talk to you guys, but I'm not sure that they're just going to send their P&L to an external party, even if they shut down the organization. So I think maybe the best opportunity is to talk through high net worth individuals who might be willing to invest, coming to the table with those folks. They might then be willing to maybe share some of that information with folks who are going to be ready to invest. Afuya says, what about Sunsat 1, the South Africa's in South Africa? That's a satellite. Yes, that's a satellite, but that doesn't solve the issue, right? Finances comes down to revenue generated, right? So you can be on a satellite, but then distribution. Where is it being distributed? Who's going to see it? And how is income going to be generated? Right. These are look, guys, I want to say I do appreciate all of the everyone coming in with ideas, looking to try to save it. That means that this meant as much to you guys as it did to me. So I totally get it. But believe me, much of what you guys are requesting and recommending have been looked into thoroughly. We talked about a Substack with them and other things, but the main thing that it came down to was the idea was to democratize this news for everyone, right? The idea was to make sure that this news was available to everyone. So unfortunately, without that, I don't know what else they can do. I have some ideas, which I'm not going to talk about here. and that I'm going to present to them. But, you know, in short order, everyone's going to need to start looking for other, you know, other employment, and, you know, and that's just the way it is, right? I mean, hold on. I'm sorry. I'm trying to verify something and it's not allowing me to. So I'm just, hey, for a TikTok. Any other questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? If there are, let me know. If not, I think we're going to bring this thing to a close. Okay. Good. This is good. Good point. So Byron Allen, who owns Allen Media Group, the Weather Channel, etc. You mentioned another name who's in the middle of a lawsuit, so I don't know. But Tyler Perry, he said, pro woman says Tyler Perry comes to mind. Tyler Perry's in the middle of a pretty expensive lawsuit right now, so I don't know, but we'll see. I don't know what Tyler Perry's business dealing is going to look like in the future. But pro woman says, doubt if they invest and challenge this drama. Maybe. I don't know. Byron Allen is a different figure because he does invest a lot in like black owned media. He has like HBCU websites. He has obviously the Weather Channel. His company's called Allen Media Group, AMG. So maybe I don't know. But these are all good points. But again, those are people to reach out to. Earn Your Leisure. That's a good point. They're big in Africa. Yes, they are. They're big on Africa. Yes, they are. It seems that they've made a huge pivot to focusing and talking about Africa a lot. They're building something in Ghana. Yes. Reach out to them. You guys en masse reaching out will get this on their radar to ensure that somebody out there will do something to change this, you know? So that's why I'm talking about it here. There are other topics that I had planned to talk about today and to go over today. But you know, this was important, right? I mean, this is huge. So guys, unfortunately with that, we are at time. I have to jump to another meeting, but I just want to make sure that you guys are all aware of what's happening. You guys now know what to do. Flood the inboxes of all these people that you guys mentioned in the comments. Share this with them. And also make sure you share this with anybody you know who's thinking about Africa and wants to see Africa get back to its rightful place on the world stage. So I want to thank you guys all for watching and for staying on this long. And I want to thank you guys for supporting Authentic African and the stuff we were doing with African Stream. We will continue to be here as Authentic African and try to be as authentic as possible. And, you know, so stay tuned. We will be back on Thursday with another live stream with news about what's happening on the continent. Unfortunately, this time, maybe the last time, we talk about news that has been reported on by African Stream. So come back on Thursday, 5 p.m. EST. With that, guys, thanks for watching. See you all on the next video.